Meeting to order. Agenda review and disposition. Any changes or additions or? No, everything's good. Okay, great. We have quite a few minutes to approve. Do we want to do them grouped together, or do people have corrections or changes or anything? I didn't see anything. I don't know if anyone else saw anything. Phil?
I thought at the retreat, I had made a motion, authorize Bruce to support waiving the eligibility requirement for the fourth quarter of last year. And I believe that passed unanimously, but I don't see it.
It's on the retreat minutes, pretty much a 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth bullet down. On a motion by Bonnie, seconded by Lisa, all vote in favor to support NHIA eligibility.
Okay.
Broadly.
I think I made the motion, so I was looking for my name.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it doesn't make any difference, that's fine.
All right.
As long as it's in the minutes.
Yeah.
The only thing.
And I recommended, at the council hearing, Phil, I presented the motion and it passed.
Okay, great. So who wants to make a motion to approve July 28th, July 21st, June 16th, June 2nd, May 19th minutes? Sam, seconded by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Great. Okay. Privilege of the floor. Did you have, when do you have?
Yes, I have one letter that was sent. Did all of you get that letter from Jonathan Centauri?
Okay.
So he wanted it read out loud. I mean, if you need a copy, here you go. But, dear members of the, so I'll read it. Is that okay, Lisa? Dear members of the school board, I'm writing as the parent of a Plymouth High School student to request that you consider starting the first few weeks of 2021 school year at safety level 4, full remote, as outlined in your draft reopening plan, rather than safety level 3, as has been previously suggested. I'm making this request because of my concern about how the proposed reopening of Plymouth State University might affect the spread of COVID-19 in the region served by SAU 48. I'm a faculty member at PSU. In a recent town hall meeting for PSU employees, PSU President Donald Burke stated there will be COVID outbreaks on the PSU campus under the current reopening plan, but the PSU hopes to contain them on PSU campus. I'm extremely doubtful about the university's ability to contain such outbreaks within the physical boundaries of the PSU campus. And I know that many of the other PSU employees share those concerns, even as we're working to implement safety recommendations. Many of those PSU recommendations, including 3-foot distancing in classrooms, are the same ones that SAU 48 intends to implement with its K-12 students, all of whom already live in our area. I worry about whether those same recommendations will prevent spread of COVID-19 among college-age students coming together into PSU's classrooms and dorms from throughout the United States and abroad. If PSU insists on reopening under these conditions, I'm concerned that an outbreak of COVID-19 on the PSU campus would rapidly spread into the greater Plymouth and SAU 48 area, and that the reopening of PRHS at safety level 3 would only help increase the speed and spread of an outbreak. For these reasons, I'm asking you to consider starting the high school year at safety level 4 for at least 3 to 4 weeks to monitor the situation at PSU before bringing the high school students together in person. Thank you for your consideration and for your hard work in the reopening plan. Sincerely, Jonathan Centauri.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Discussion items, committee structure.
Did you pass out the...
I get them, everything's passed up.
Okay. So in front of you, do all of you have this? You didn't pass this one out, did you?
No.
Can you pass this one? This to the board members. So at the retreat, we had talked about reorganizing some of the committees a little bit. So we did a teaching and learning committee and a school operations committee. There are pieces under that, topics to review under each of those, so I just ask you to review them over the next few weeks, and any suggestions be made at the next board meeting if you want anything changed, but it's the first draft at kind of looking at the two different committees.
Yep.
So we're going from 3 to 2, right?
Right. And if you just think about it over the next few weeks, and then let me know any thoughts. If you want to go back to 3 or stick with the 2 with the topics underneath that, then we can stick with that as well.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anyone have any questions? Okay, and I'm going to go back to privilege of the floor, number 1. Sorry about that. I got a little excited, so we welcome you if you'd like to have anything to say.
Thank you, actually. Some of you were at the select board meeting last night, and in that meeting, they discussed how there are already 3 confirmed cases from students at Plymouth University. So I think Mr. Santori or Dr. Santori's concerns are fairly valid. From what I understand, 2 of those students are quarantined here in Plymouth. The other one's been sent home. So, I mean, school hasn't started. And there's already 3. Yeah. Just wanted to add that. Thank you, Lisa.
Sure. Okay, back to discussion item. Sorry about that. Reopening plans, revisions, and updates.
So we went through the entire plan the last time and all of the recommendations. So we took some of the board's feedback on tightening up the language around masking with faculty and with students.
They all have it.
They all have it as well. And we looked at, we worked on creating a more robust remote option. We talked a little bit about that at the retreat, and what it looks like for the students that pivot to remote, and then same with the other remote, which is, that's the only choice. So if folks don't feel comfortable coming back, they can choose the remote option. We have shifted some of the language in that as well. And basically that says, so the last meeting we had talked about Virtual Learning Academy as being a viable option for students to sign up for. Well, obviously there's been a significant increase in enrollment in Virtual Learning Academy, and some of the classes are full. So if a student does not get into that program or a class that they want, we will be offering a separate district-approved program that they can take the class. So whether it's a GradPoint or another online module that we can approve, those students can take more than just Virtual Learning Academy in case they don't get into the class that they're looking for. Any questions on the remote?
Could you just expand on that a little bit? I understand about BLACs. When you talk about other platforms, is that something that would not be offered through our staff, but there would be some independent agency that would be doing that?
So we oversee the facilitation of it, and it's an online working module. So the program that we have currently is called GradPoint. So it takes you through the class through an online module. And typically, Mrs. Francis oversees that piece to make sure kids are on pace, if they need additional help, that they, if you have to connect with somebody that can help you with some of the assignments, she's there for that piece. But it's a separate online platform.
And we will have support in-house in a specific subject area if it's heavy duty?
No, she covers all the areas. There's about 138 courses students can pick from, and if a student does need help in a particular area, I've got the personnel that I can assist in that. I got a math person, whatever. But Crystal oversees it.
It's not a new program either. It's something we've used already.
Maureen?
Regarding GradPoint, are these New Hampshire teachers, where where are the teachers from? How do we know who they are? And
So it's just an independent online platform.
Okay.
So it's not like VLAX where they would provide somebody to check in with every week, but we have our own personnel here that would help facilitate
So
that.
there's not a teacher who
No.
teaches online?
It's a self-guided module.
Kids move at their own pace, as she said, self-guided.
And
when
like,
they
we've
pass the
used it
test,
already. Yep.
When they pass the test, they move on to the next module, and they complete the entire module. It's a pass, they don't get a grade though. They get a pass.
And we've had students,
Oh, Phil, we've had this program for over 10 years, and it's been very, very successful for kids who have failed a class. I've used it in summer school. So the people that are running the program now, they're experts at the test, and at different levels too. So I can do different levels, and again, it was 138 courses. We'll probably, depending on how many kids want to use it, I may have to increase the number of licenses that we have for it. But we've had it for over 10 years. Very successful program.
Bob, did you want to add anything?
No, so, grad point, there are a couple different ways that works. We've been using credit recovery, which is more of a competency-based credit recovery program. When we're doing it for original credit, they have another module where actually you take, here are the lessons that you have to complete, and then you take the test. Whereas in the credit recovery, if you pre-test, because we use it for credit, if you've already failed a course, and you're doing it to recover that course, there's a section where you can pre-test, and depending on how you do on the pre-test, then you only have to do the prescribed modules to then take those tests. When it's for original credit, it's prescription, so you have to do this, and this before you can even take the test. So there's not a way to opt out at the beginning of it. So that's how it's the same program, but run two different ways for two different purposes.
Maureen?
With VLAX, how, with more kids signing on from our district, how does that work tax-wise? So, how does VLAX get paid? How does that affect our budget? How does that affect taxes?
So it's interesting that it's completely changed for this year only. So we do still receive adequacy for students enrolled in, full adequacy if they enroll in VLAX.
Okay.
Which in the past, it's a separate charter school, and we don't receive the adequacy. But for this year only, the commissioner and the Department of Ed said it will be allowable for students because it's very hard with the resources we have to run in person and then have our own people still run a remote learning option at the same time. So for this year only, it counts as full adequacy if they're enrolled. And they work with us. Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, other business?
Well, I have more to go.
Oh, right.
That was just the first one. Which we have.
My bad.
It's okay.
Sorry.
I wish I was done that quickly. Section 2, so we updated this a little bit after we had presented the last time. The CDC was in conflict with the Department of Health and Human Services in New Hampshire as far as the screening and then any response to students with symptoms or students that tested positive or were near someone who had a presumptive case, a positive case. So instead of reading through the whole piece, we made a direct call with the Department of Health and Human Services and basically cut and copied what they're doing because they're the ones that are working with us and doing the contact tracing. So it does change the amount of time a student is out. New Hampshire is much more, exceeds the CDC recommendations as far as how long a student is out or a staff member is out with symptoms, or if there's a positive case. So, and the last piece on the screening was that question around if you travel outside of New England, a student or staff member would need to quarantine for 14 days. For that piece. That may change between now and the beginning of school, but as of today, this is what we're recommending, and I think when we called the Department of Ed, they said to go with the Department of Health and Human Services because they're running the show as far as COVID goes. So we just updated it to mimic what the Department of Health and Human Services is doing. Section 3.
Can I-
Oh, yeah.
Same.
So I
Oh,
have,
yes, that's right.
I had a few questions about it. In Appendix B, first of all, in terms of just consistency, I know when we get to the cloth face coverings, we have used the language, faculty, staff, educational personnel, right? So technically, there's faculty here, I assume you mean that faculty is included with staff, but
Right.
divided up in other places, so.
Right.
I don't know that it particularly matters which way we go, but just to be consistent. Then the other issue comes down to, what about, since we're going to be requiring visitors, volunteers, and guests to wear face coverings when they're in the building at some point, what happens if one of those people tests positive? Like, what if you get a call that, the UPS guy who's delivering packages and was putting them in the front office tested positive? Well, this wouldn't apply to that because it doesn't say
Right.
faculty, staff, or it doesn't say visitors, volunteers, guests. So just something to think about. You want it to apply to visitors, guests, and volunteers. And then the other issue that I saw in this is in the first bullet point under that Appendix B, the school building where the individual works or attends will transition to remote learning for 2 to 5 school days. So will is mandatory. Will is mandatory, shall, must. So what we're saying is if one person says, I tested positive for COVID, you automatically go 2 to 5 days to online. We could be online the whole semester if that's the case. I mean, I would be surprised if we don't have people in the community, as has been pointed out, that are going to test positive. So I don't know that we want to have that strict a standard. I would prefer to give the discretion to the superintendent and the principal, to the administration, to analyze the situation and say, this is something we've got to be really concerned about, or, we don't have to be concerned about it. I mean, you got to make common sense, practical decisions. And so I would prefer, this is me personally, and I'd be interested in what other people hear about it, changing will to may, and something like the school building where the individual works or attends may transition to remote learning for up to 5 school days. So you make the call, hey, this is something we need to do investigation for because this person had extensive contact with we're going to have to close, or you make a quick evaluation and say, no, this isn't something we're going to be concerned about. I just would hate to handcuff the administration because one person, take an extreme example, the overnight janitorial staff who has no contact with anyone else in the building, comes in for the night shift, leaves, calls up in a week and says, I tested positive. You're going to shut the building down for 2 to 5 days because of that? That's a real consideration, I think. So I would prefer to have may, which is discretionary to the administration. The other thing is too, when you go remote, what does that mean for sports? If we go remote, do we shut sports down for 2 to 5 days too? All these issues come up.
Barbara.
May I just add on to what you just said? Because I like what you said, but when you say may, I would go may, comma, at the discretion of the administration or whoever, comma, rather than just leave it at may, because who's may and, who makes the decision? Is that may allowing everybody to make a decision? We refine it to may at the discretion of the administration.
Maureen.
What does DHHS say about that? Is this part of their...
So here's the piece why we added this in, because they will say, you can contact Trace and you can touch base with us to figure out what's happening. Honestly, the first time a teacher or a student becomes positive in this school, I'm going to have teachers pulling kids out of school, teachers super worried. If I just shift to remote for 2 days, but May gives me the flexibility because we may not be there in another month. But right off the bat, with the response I got from DHHS, just finding out information, it was a 7-hour response to my phone call. So part of me thinks, am I gonna have the supports there to, I mean, we're not doing the contact tracing, it's them telling me there's a positive case. We work through whatever resources they have. There's one person on that, that's been trained to deal with all the schools. So initially, I would be supportive of changing to May, but I hope you know that if there's gonna be a positive student or staff member, I'm gonna shift to remote, because it's gonna go from here to here as far as everybody's response, just to take a minute to figure out what's happening, especially the first few times that it happens. And maybe they get additional resources, but right now, from what I'm seeing as far as support from that end, you know, maybe we just go 2 days, clean the building, somebody's positive, let's see what's what, let's get the schedules, make sure that we can figure out where this came from. And if after 2 days, we're not missing 2 days of school, it still counts as school days, and then we come back. But there is an impact, you know, if there's a COVID spread, it would impact sports. If it was not, and we shift to remote because we have so many teachers out just because maybe they've traveled outside of New England, who knows, then you can continue to have sports because it's not for a health reason. It's just because we're short teachers for a couple days. So there's those 2 reasons that you would shift to remote. But right now, I would be fine with that language as long as you know that if there is a positive student or staff member in the building, I am going to probably shift to remote for a couple days until I see what I get for a response from DHHS. If they're right on it and they're helpful, I'll be, okay, great, you know, let's get back in. Sorry, Barbara.
Bill?
Okay. Are staff prepared to, I mean, they can come to school on any given week and on Tuesday there'd be a case, then they're gonna have to shift into remote. How are they being trained to do that, and will there still be a continuous flow of curriculum during that time? That's quite a task.
Well, we had a test when we did it in March, when Kyla takes you through the rest of the, what remote or learning is going to look like. We've tightened it up. We try to make it as normal as a regular day. So the remote, it's going to be, when they go home, they're going to have their period, first period from 7:30 to 9. We try to make it as regular, so the teachers will just pick up and move on with their classes. You'll see as she takes you through, there's some pieces in there that have to be done by the teachers. They're all doing Google Docs, so, I mean, and the kids are comfortable with that, so.
It won't be the remote learning that we had last year.
No.
Correct.
It's going to be tight, and she's going to take you through that.
Okay.
So this is just on us shifting the language to match the DHHS. And then if I think I heard Sam seeing if anybody else wanted the May piece. But I just wanted to know my response probably in the first few weeks is to just see what the level of support is from Department of Health and Human Services.
Well, and that's your discretion.
Right.
If you err on the side of caution, I think most people will understand that, but
Yeah.
it gives you the discretion.
Yeah.
Rather than tying your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is, we'll do at least 3 days.
Will at least, and so I would say May up to, May, at the discretion of the administration, transition to remote learning for up to 5 days to allow. Then you could say, you know, this is a 1-day deal. We can assess this in 1 day. It's going to take 2 or 3, but it's your all's choice.
Yeah.
And to make it clear to the public, perhaps at the discretion of the administration in consultation with healthcare professionals.
Right.
Right, so that they know that it's not just a whim, you're saying, well, we're out of here for a couple days. It's something that's well thought out, and you're working with DHHS or local healthcare people to make these decisions. So putting that in there might be more clear.
I like that, but I think if we put too many restrictive parameters, it causes more problems. I think if we just leave it at May at the discretion of the administration, and within that discretion, you decide to try to reach DHHS, good luck.
It's in the flow chart anyways that we're going to consult, so that's already in there as far as the response. So no decision will be made by myself alone, believe me.
Rather than getting too restrictive detail,
Yeah.
you know, you say it's part of the process. we really only need to say may at the discretion of the administration.
I would just have to ask, does the administration want that discretion? Sometimes it's easier if you don't, if you know what it is and you go down that path, as opposed to, you know, you and then having to make, is it easier in this case, given the severity of what's there?
Well, you're following the process.
I'm following a process. I think I was clear to you. You know, I think I'm clear of what I'm going to
Well,
do.
it's a decision if they say may.
No, but she's still gonna follow the process of calling
Right.
the DHHS.
Yeah.
The DHHS is gonna say, don't go back.
Right.
You gotta wait. If they don't, she's gonna be able to say, oh, we can come.
But Phil, it also still gives me the authority to say, I'm not hearing back from DHHS. I'm
Right.
going to close I'm going to just say everybody's moving to remote until I figure everything out. Give it a break, takes the edge off of everyone, and it still counts as 2 school days. So I feel fine with that. I know how I'm going to respond in the first, I'm going to go tighter the first month,
Okay.
just because of where we're at. And then loosen up if things change. But right now, that would be my response.
I think personally, someone has to take responsibility. That's what they get paid to do. Rather than call the full board together and make an ultimate
Right.
decision.
Well, I don't think it'll be a board decision anymore.
That's what I'm saying, I'm just explaining that I think that the public and the people will gonna feel more comfortable that one person or one of this area, we know they're gonna make a decision. I mean, the problem with a lot of what's going on is you've got 14,000 different people making different decisions.
I'm not trying to take that away from them. I'm trying to say, all I'm trying to say is it easier for them to administrate this protocol if they don't have to argue with the decision, but rather black and white? That's all I'm saying.
But what I'm saying is COVID-19 is not gonna be that simple, Phil.
No, well,
Just right now, it's not.
for example, as a superintendent of school, I had to make snow day calls. Hated it with a passion. I loved it when the bus company said, Phil, we're not driving. Okay, and it relieves the pressure, decisions still being made, still okay by the superintendent, that's all.
And that's what I'm saying, she's got DHHS as the school bus. in my-
Yeah, and if I'm not hearing back from them, I'll say, you know what, we're gonna take a day or two to just get everyone home, figure out what's what, and then hopefully I get a call back soon to see what's happening. So I just think if we go through the process a few times, that would be helpful, but it just, with what they have for resources, I just want to be clear that I would shift, that all of you know I would shift to remote if there was a positive student or staff member in the building for temporary time.
I just want to, reiterate in terms of the language, in terms of just making consistent faculty, staff, educational personnel. And I just mentioned just to match it, because there's, I guess, a different categories of people that are in the building on a regular basis. And again, I think the administration will have to make a decision, and this is not one that I have a strong feeling either way on. What about visitors, volunteers, and guests? I mean, I don't even know if you can do anything about that. And maybe it's not even worth attempting to, because you got your hands full with all this. I just raised the issue because we're going to require those folks when they come into the building to wear masks in certain situations. So it is theoretically possible that one of those people could test positive.
Right.
And then maybe we don't address it as part of this.
Yeah, I would rather not put it in there
Yeah.
at this point.
I'm just raising the
Yeah.
issues that we
Yeah.
all need to think about. Trying to, and some are more likely than others, but these are just things that keep
Yeah.
coming along.
Are we ready to go to the next part? Clock, are we changing that language or keep may or will?
Well, I guess we should see how other people feel. Are we on board with the May piece?
I am.
Everybody likes, Barbara liked the May, okay, and Phil did, and Sam does, and Tim, okay, so that sounds good.
And you want that to be made at the discretion of the administration? Is that at the discretion of the administration after the May?
I thought that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, Okay. And then is it 4 up to 5 days? Or is it 2 to 5 days?
I would suggest for up to 5 days. That's
Yeah,
what I
it
would
still gives me the
suggest.
flexibility.
It gives you maximum flexibility.
Bob, as we move on to face coverings, I'm going to have you review that part as far as what's been, so we did review this at the last board meeting, just asked to tighten it up a little bit, so we tightened it up for faculty and staff and for students.
So again, in the old one, we lumped everybody together. And so what we changed was that students will, which again is not mandatory that they have to do that. Students will, and then there's a list of things, and then faculty, staff, and then education. Starting out, we start with the big picture first. So student will wear a face cloth covering when not physically distancing at least 6 feet. So that's in all areas coming into the school, out of the school. If you're not physically distanced by 6 feet, students will wear that. The next one, they will wear entering, exiting, and riding a bus. They will do that entering and exiting the school building, so the mask will be on in those situations. In offices, hallways, and lobbies, unless seated in chairs or on benches in physical distancing at least 6 feet. The reason that that was put in there like that is in the lobbies, we will have tables set up. It's one of the ways that we're going to be spreading out the lunches and the breaks so that students can eat in different places, not just in the cafeteria. Well, those situations, those tables in the hallways and in the foyers, on the 3rd floor, downstairs, and the bottom floor, and on the main floor, are technically in the hallway. So this basically says if you're in the hallways, when you're in your hallways, you're going to have it. However, if you're seated at a table or a chair or benches, as long as you're 6 feet apart, you will not have to wear that. Does everybody understand? I don't know if that was very clear. But it's basically to carve out that when you're seated in those areas and you're 6 feet apart, you don't have to have the mask on. In the cafeteria, learning commons, theater, gymnasiums, locker rooms, and other designated common areas, if not physically distancing at least 6 feet. So again, covering those different common areas, you had asked that the last time that we identify some of those common areas, like what is a common area? So we gave that list, but also left it other areas as well. And then in the classrooms, if seated less than 6 feet apart, students will be wearing a mask, or engaging in learning stations or other activities that require close contact. So you may be in a classroom where you're more than 6 feet apart, and so students don't necessarily need to be wearing a mask. However, if now during the learning activity they're going to come in closer contact than the 6 feet, then they would have to put the mask on. And that's for students. And then at the bottom of it, we just put in there the discipline that goes with that, the refusal to wear a cloth face covering, belligerents, and that follows our policy in the handbook under belligerents.
Which we've had in that.
Yeah, oh, sorry, I missed one. And then the last one was, I know there were some clarifications about what we're doing in music classes. So both band and chorus, to make it very clear, students will wear cloth face covering when playing or singing in band or choir indoors. So when they are singing and when they are playing, they will have a mask on. That was added in to not only the face cloth covering, but also into the sections down lower where we had the breakdown for band and chorus.
So how do they play the instruments?
So, what was in the original plan, that stayed in the original plan, that if they're playing an instrument and they have a slip in their mask, then they can play the instrument, and there are other considered mitigating strategies in there, that coverings that go over the tubas and over the other instruments so that that air doesn't get spread out throughout the room. But it changed that when they are going to sing and when they're going to play, they will have face coverings on. To keep it consistent with every other classroom in the building, that if they are within 6 feet, they have to have a mask on. But not to have separate rules for one class compared to another. If students are more than 6 feet, then they would be under the same guise as every other class. So that is for students. So then you take the same thing down, not everything matches up, but now for faculty, staff, educational personnel, which Sam was talking about that language, visitors, volunteers, and guests will wear cloth face coverings when not physically distancing at least 6 feet. So again, starting with the big picture, if entering, exiting, or riding a bus, again, not that we expect too many visitors and things to be on a bus. However, coaches or other things or other activities, that would apply to them. If they're riding on a bus, they would be in a mask. Entering and exiting the school building, same rule for students, same rule for all guests and people. Same wording up there in offices, hallways, lobbies, unless seated at chairs or benches, and physical 6 feet. And then the same thing with in the cafeteria, learning commons, when not physically distanced at 6 feet. And in classrooms, if not physically distancing at least 6 feet. So we believe that this separated for both, here's what students are, here is what everybody else that would be in the educational facility. And our hope is that this language is more clear than the last time we presented. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry.
Barbara?
So, with reference to visitors, volunteers, and guests, will there be good, clear direction before they actually enter the school, so they'll know, like a sign that says, at this point, you must wear a mask to go any further, or something like that?
Yes, we will be putting signage on all of the doors and in the hallways. You'll see a lot more signage about a lot of different things. But one of those is both the screening process as well as face covering.
Sorry.
I don't
Sorry, I know there's not religious authority.
Yeah, I think I need to get permission from the board to have you talk. So do I have permission from, let me just get nods, okay. All right, Sarah, go
I
ahead.
just have one quick question about the language for your mask coverage. How do you plan to address individuals with medical exceptions?
So we have that as part of it, is that they can have medical exceptions or through an IEP team process.
Okay, but there's no clarification in your mask language about medical exceptions?
Is that in the big plan?
It's in the big plan.
Yeah.
Yes, it's in the big
This is just
plan.
adjustments
This
from
is
last
just-
meeting.
It's on the website.
Sorry.
It's on the website, the meeting
Yeah.
plan. It's
Yeah.
the
Tim?
whole,
I'm not sure if this is the place to talk about this, but we talked about interns coming from PSU and moving it, we don't allow them on campus. We're not, where did we end up with that?
So we are delaying that process at this point.
Okay.
We have talked with really the only ones we're even talking to about still is the interns, the year-long interns, but that's being pushed off to October, I think, that we're going to talk about it again.
Good.
So we're just kind of putting a hold on it for now, so we don't have to make all of those decisions right away.
Perfect.
Phil?
So will we have student teachers in September?
No,
Okay.
no, not to start.
That exemption is on page 12 of the reading.
Any other questions? No.
Okay. Physical environment. So this is just a piece that's required as part of the plan, that we have to maintain an updated seating chart for every class. That we can do in our software already. So we just added that into Power Schools, our student management system. So that's just something we're adding in case somebody, if we have to figure out who is sitting next to who. So all the classes will have assigned seats in there. Any questions on that one? Are we good? That one's pretty clear. So in the past few weeks in Section 5, Teaching and Learning, we really, prior to the past couple of weeks, we were focused on logistics, really how to get kids here, how to move through the building, that whole piece. Teaching and Learning, we have looked at what we learned from our March remote learning and the feedback that we got from the public on that piece, what went well, what didn't go well, and really what platforms do we have in place already so teachers don't have to learn a whole new platform. So at this point, we have been a Google Suite for Education now for close to 10 years. So Google is something we've used with kids for a long time, and they have students have emails connected to that. As part of the Google Suite, and I apologize if you're not techie, you may get lost pretty quickly, so bear with me. Google Classroom is a way to organize your assignments online. So many teachers used Google Classroom as a way to organize what's happening in the classroom. So giving assignments, checking assignments, reviewing what's been completed and whatnot, right, Bob? Am I missing anything else? So some of the teachers did use that during the remote learning, but we left it up to them as far as any other platforms that they wanted to use. We're going to move to the same platform, so students and teachers know exactly what to expect if we pivot to remote learning pretty quickly. As part of Google Suite, there's Google Meet, which takes place of Zoom. So it does the same place as Zoom within our own protected accounts. So Google Suite has a better security system as far as when we deliver, if we're videoing and have to Google Meet. So that's Zoom. If you know Zoom, Google Meet's kind of the same thing in the same suite. Google Jamboard is basically an interactive whiteboard. So a teacher can teach content live or record themselves teaching a lesson, so students may access that at a different point as well. Does that cover Jamboard? I just learned about Jamboard too, so that piece is new. All teachers will be getting trained on that the first several days that we're here. That is the majority of the training is on upgrading to the Google Suite and using all the components within that platform. So that is part of the 6 days that the teachers are coming back. There's a ton of training around that. So that's what we're shifting to if we pivot to remote learning. They go on Google Classroom within Google Suite, which they already know about and they'll be taught with on a regular basis in the in-person classes. They'll be able to switch pretty quickly. Same if a student is asked to be out for 10 days. We're gonna have groups of students out for extended periods of time unless the guidelines change, but as of now, if it's 10 to 14 days, we want those students that chose in-person learning to keep up with the content and assignments. So that will all be within the Google Suite as well. We will have paraprofessional support for students that are out for 10 days or 14 days. To have somebody to check in with to say, oh, I really don't get this. So the teachers teaching in person, these paraprofessionals will help with more of the executive functioning pieces. Assignments, I really didn't understand this. Can you help me find this? Did the teacher get this assignment that I passed and I can't figure this out on Google Meet? So there'll be supports outside of that as well. And that will be for short-term and long-term closures as far as that. Attached, you'll see this in more detail, but really the gist of it is that when we shift to remote learning, you will mimic the in-person school day. So it's not going to look at all like it did March through June. It's going to, if school starts at 7:30, and it's an A day, then your A block, first block will start at 7:30. And there will be a component of direct instruction, additional help desk, and a screen break during that time too. So you'll have the delivery of content, just like a regular class goes. And then if they go into group work, which they can do through Google Meet, they can do that. Or if there's an assignment they have to deal with. Bernie, sorry.
So if we're doing this and you're able to switch, we're shutting down for 2 days or somebody's quarantined for 10 days or whatever, what would prevent students that are choosing remote learning for a semester to do the same thing?
Because it would be double duty as far as teachers, and they're totally out the whole time. So it's a way to keep up, I think, and we can't predict how many days we're going to be out. So it's not going to, it would be, I guess, I don't know a better way to describe that.
You're asking to do two different.
Okay, and then so going with that, with the original, if you choose to do the remote learning component, at least one term or whatever, and say you decide it's not working, so you're going to go back, how do they transition then between the program and remote learning and then coming back in?
So they were asking families to commit to a marking period.
Semester.
Yeah, a semester, sorry. It's different at every school. I'm trying to keep all the plans in my head. But shifting to committing to the semester and then transitioning them in after that. So they would be helped with school counselors and whatever to get them back into the program.
Is it because they're two different curriculums?
They're two different, but they'll be monitored by different personnel, so they will never really be disconnected from us. We're gonna see their progress. The difference with the VLAX participation now is we know their grades, we know how they're doing, there's a chance for us to check in with them, where before it was like you enroll in VLAX, that's your school, where now, if you do VLAX, you need to engage with kids that are in your community. So they're not just, if you choose that, you're not totally missing out on what's happening in Plymouth Regional.
But they'll be getting the same curriculum. I guess that's what I'm getting. If you're doing biology and you're doing VLAX, and then you come back here.
Brittany, this plan that she's talking about now, this is if she shuts the building down and we go into it for 5 days or a month or 2 months.
I know, I'm skipping ahead because I'm
Yeah.
also considering if we end up going completely remote.
And this is it. And this is what the curriculum would be, the same biology we have here, the same English taught by the same teacher, but it would be the same time. Our school day is going to look the exact same, but they're not going to be here. They're going to be home.
So if that were to happen, which I hope it doesn't, but if it were, and it looked like, say it happened in November, and you're like, oh, we're going to be on this till April, May, whatever, the end of the school year. Will those students that are doing the VLAX and the other program, can they then transition into the other program?
I think that's something we'll have to consider if we go into a long-term closure. I'm trying to really just focus on, short-term closures, and if we have another stay-at-home governor says, hey, we're done for 3 months, then I will bring another plan quickly to see if there's a way to transition kids back in. I mean, that's just where we're at for right today.
Barbara?
I'm trying to envision a student or many students using the online platform who have a question relative to the program or the course of studies or need help. They're stuck, they're stumbled, they can't get from point A to point B to have a certain question or assistance, question answered for assistance. Unless they have a multitude of those, how does it work? We have many paraprofessionals or teachers who can address those at those moments, or is it going to be like a stockpiling of the question?
No, they'll be available during class.
And the VLAX, the teacher's available for periods of the day, so they'll be able to ask that teacher direct. They'll have office hours. On our plan too, there's a time built in for the teacher's prep or whatever, their duty, where the teachers are available to reach out to those kids that are having trouble or asking questions. But it's built into the schedule during that remote learning. So in VLAX, the teacher's available there, they keep in touch. With ours too, we built in time for questions and answers in that piece and the kids that are struggling.
Because
So both teacher and paraprofessional that are following that kid will help out with the student lead. Because again, the grades are all going to be, they need to post the homework. There's one site on there that makes it easy for us to look at. They have to continually, the grades have to be upgraded in a timely manner. This is a lot more manageable for parents and the kids, because the kids know this well.
So our kids already used a lot of these
Right.
programs and fly right through it. So I would say just as far as issues that we had very minimal issues as far as any technology issues. They're better at it than most of us. But the other piece is we had the supports there and we were able to answer the questions, I think, as they came in.
So, if I may just follow up.
Yep.
So, I'm sitting here thinking if a student is in a regular, normal, everyday classroom like we used to know, they can kind of stop the teacher and ask a question. And it might be more difficult in either of these situations. And if so, are they going to be lost if they don't get that response soon? And are they going to be able to have that response And second part of that is, and I think you alluded to this, Bruce, is there are going to be specific times, just like your regular school day, and the prep times for the teachers, that students will be able to try to connect with the teachers during the prep
Yes.
times? Okay.
It's built in. And if I may just read on, okay, when we go to a short-term or long-term, the daily schedule is going to be similar to in-person physical school with modification. Now, what we put in there is on the A and B day, this will include 1 hour per class of direct instruction. So every class that's going on, biology, algebra 2, or whatever, we're asking the teachers for 1 hour of instruction. Every class is usually 90 minutes long. So then we know we need the kids to take a screen break. You can't go for the full 90 minutes. So that's built-in time. They're still in that class. So if they needed help on that lesson, whatever, there's time built in. And then there's also time built in for kids, because the teacher, their duty or their prep, they're available for questions and answers. It's like their office hours, but it's built into their schedule. Whereas before, it was on that Wednesday. Just that Wednesday, it was a little more difficult. And when kids come in, they know they gotta show up because we're asking the teachers to take attendance. First, I wanna know who's in there first period, second period. You're just not coming in when you want. You need to be there on first period, English or whatever you have in your schedule. It's the same as if you were in this building.
Phil, I think you were next.
Will the teachers be in this building?
No. They could. They could if we didn't have enough resources and we had to shut down and they could come and use this
If
building.
they want. If it's, they can use their own classrooms if they would like, if we're not shut down for COVID spread. So if we're shut down for a shortage of teachers and they want to come in and teach using their tools in their classroom, then they may.
That's why, like, the technology is here, whereas in their homes it might not be.
So we have provided devices to every student and to every staff member that they can use a Chromebook that has all the tools on there already. And in the spring, with some of the funds federally, and for this fall, we have purchased boosters or whatever they may need to run the capacity of their internet.
Maureen?
Yeah, just a quick piggyback on what Marla said. The kids will know which paraprofessional to contact if they're having issues or problems when they're at home. It usually is the student saying, I don't get this. And it's
No, they'll know after, hopefully we're in this building for at least 2 weeks and they'll know. If we get to go through a 2-week schedule, they'll know. They'll know who the teacher and the paraprofessional are. Because Bob's doing all those changes on schedules now. We're trying to get that settled in. And when the kids come back, they'll make some schedule changes. So if we get a 2-week, they'll know.
Thank you.
Christie?
Just in the in-person models, back to that, but a student might be quarantined, it just says that they can use Google Meet to live stream access to the classroom, or it's recommended. I'm just wondering, is that all secure for like every student in the class?
We put that as a option, that is a new exemption.
Okay.
I don't know, Bob, do you want to describe that a little bit more, the streaming, as far as that it's allowable at this point? Again, one of those pandemic rules that went away.
You know, I don't.
So, it used to be, the state law in New Hampshire was a little different, where you had to have permission of the school board for any recordings of what's happening in a classroom, and you also needed parental permission signed for every student in there. When this came up, when we were at our administrative retreat, we contacted our school attorney who said that the law had changed. And so under the live streaming exemption, I have not seen the law, but under that, it allows for live streaming, which is different from recording. And I believe that the way the language in the statute reads is you still cannot record classrooms for evaluation purposes. But live streaming is not recording, and the reason that we're putting it in as a recommendation is, if you think about it, where these kids are in class physically, and all of a sudden, from nothing to do with their own, now they're forced to be out of school. And if a teacher wanted to have that student live stream into the classroom, it just allows the student access to the classroom even while they're in their home.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thing. I just wondered legally if that was.
Yeah, we did too.
You know, is that good with everyone, whether it's teachers, students in the classroom, just.
So it'll be an option up to teachers, we're not gonna require that, but if that's something they wanna use, we will explore it. And then if there's any other parameters we need to put in place, we will do so in the acceptable use packet that we sent home to kids and stuff like that.
Thank you.
We already reviewed the band and chorus piece on face coverings. The only piece that I just wanted to update, and I can have Bruce and Bob review this as well, is that in the previous plan, we had said if we could cohort, we will. We can't at this point based on all the, there's more issues with what we're doing cohorting than not, so we are not going to cohort. And then the other piece is in regards to hallways. I wanted to be clear with what we're, after seeing a lot of the news stories this week of what's going on in hallways, I wanted to be clear of what we're doing here. So, as you know, it's required that students have masks in the hallways, and there will be personnel out there to monitor that piece. We will have students stay to the right as they, whichever direction they're going. The lockers will not be used, so there won't be any stopping between classes, but there will be more kids in the hallways that are not socially distanced. So I wanted to just share with you, the hallways will be busy, but it's for a short period of time. All kids and staff will have masks, and we will not be using the lockers. So it's just a passing of, what's the time between classes?
5 minutes, except for after the first class, which is a 10-minute, where there's a break, where students normally will come and get food.
Yeah.
At the break. So that's a 10.
So that's just something that came up this week that I wanted to share with you so you knew exactly what to expect.
We're going to encourage a lot of outdoor activities, Lynn, so if the weather is good, and go out with their classes on that piece, and the same thing with our kids during the break, during that morning break, lunchtime too, picnic tables will be out, ready to go. The awnings have been ordered, so.
Yep.
But we will have, going to have a full force out there. Once you guys pass this, I'll be able to send these letters home and direct them to parents of exactly what they have to do. But the first day, they're all going to need to come, with a mask on. If they don't, I'll have one for them then. But, it's not going to be a continuing fighting and, back and forth. But a lot of common sense has to come in too, because kids can be forgetful or whatever. So it's going to take some training on both parts, both the staff and the kids as we go through with this. But I think they're excited about coming back, and we have these 6 days to work with the teachers to make them feel comfortable and to go through the guidelines. And then we have the freshman orientation coming in on the 25th, 9 to 11. So. We're going to work with them and then review that with the teachers after. But Kyla's right, when she says, the hallways. I envision the hallways being real busy, real quick, but everyone will have a mask on. Going to have the teachers try to open their doors in the morning when the kids come in, so they're not gathering in groups. But it's going to take work because they haven't seen each other, and school is where they know everyone. So we'll get them on a routine.
So that's it as far as the updated recommendations, so I'd ask if you're comfortable voting on the reopening plan with the amendments. Great.
Okay, I need a motion, unless is there any more questions first? Any more questions? Maureen?
Do we have a sizable number of families who are choosing to not come, and is that going to alleviate some of the space concerns in the classroom?
Absolutely. So at this point, we've sent out a survey. We have all but
So we sent that out, I want to say we sent that out the end of last week, and we closed it on Friday.
About 200
And
this month.
There were 480, I think, responses back. We were still short 215, so we sent out, or I can't tell you whether we sent it out now or whether it's going out tomorrow morning. We're reaching out specifically to those students that did not respond. At the current time, I want to say, as it keeps increasing, we're at 82 students chose to do just the remote only. So what I was able to do across the board for classes is try to limit every single classroom to 20 or under students. Of course, there are certain classes where there's only one section and there's 23 students in that section of, say, AP English. You know, I'm not going to throw kids out of it. So, but the majority of the building, I would say 90% of the classes now are under 20 students per class, and some of them are much smaller than that. And so when we hear back from the other 200, I can only imagine that those numbers are going to continue to fall. So again, trying to keep the class sizes as small as they possibly can, create as much distance between desks in each of the classrooms. And that's something that we're going to be working on, right up until the students show up day one, is how much space can we create in each individual classroom.
So I guess we need a motion made by Sam
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
to pass the revisions and updates on the original plan that we have already passed, just to put it on the table what we're voting for, so it's just for the revisions and updates. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining?
Thank you.
Other business?
Lisa, could I just ask Bruce to go over the schedule of the opening of school, the dates? There are a couple of people asked me, and I didn't remember.
For students,
Faculty?
This was
Everything, I guess.
the faculty just sent the letter up today. They have 3 days next week, 18, 19, and 20. 20, no, sorry. And then they have the 3 days the following week. The freshman orientation is the 25th. And the kids come back on the 31st. They're going right to advisory to pick up their schedules, to pick up their student handbook, and to pick up their one-on-one device, their Chromebook that they need. It'll be an A day, and we don't plan on assembling kids till we usually have our meetings. We won't be doing those large groups piece. And 2 weeks later, then we'll bring in the photographers and get their pictures on that. We've worked with Cafe Services, pretty good plan. They're gonna give us cards because we don't have the pictures, so, and we're also when they check out, so they can just scan them and go, no touch and just go. We're also, we're looking at the possibility of, and I'll have to come back with you guys to get your okay in that. There's some way, Mr. Austin came up with the idea, can the kids take out their phone and just scan it like you do if you're going to an airplane? And we worked with Frank the other day from Cafe Services. He's going to investigate that. So I've got 6 days with the teachers, and that letter went out today. And most of it will be spent on what Kyla just went through, on the Google, the remote learning, because that'll be new for them. We're providing them a ton of instruction, as she said, from our Kylie Cap and her teachers on that piece. And then the other piece is we'll be going on, what the school is going to look like and the consistency that we need to have throughout every classroom, so everyone's real clear on just what you guys put in place. And that's what has to take place for this to happen. So.
I need your consent.
I do. I'm going to need their consent and their cooperation. So, those 6 days, Phil. But the 31st is when we open.
And then, Kyla, what are we thinking for our next meeting? Do you want to see us before school starts? Do you want to see us right after school starts?
So I would ask for September 1st.
That would be perfect.
This way it gets us in for a day.
September 1st, and that's Tuesday.
Do you want to do it at your normal time instead of, I would probably say, because we're going to be in school, so we would have to do that, so.
5 o'clock sound good for everybody? 5 o'clock is our normal time, yes.
All right.
Okay.
So that's September 1st to 5.
September
Yes.
1st at 5, right
It's
here.
Tuesday,
Yep.
September 1st. Board member concerns. Anyone need to bring anything up?
I'm sorry. People ask me, and I don't have the answer. Latest on athletics? What-
September 8th. September 8th is the first stage practice, and that'll be the first day 2 for co-curricular to start. And then the first date to play, it varies from the sport. I know football at the top of my head is the 25th. Some of the other sports are the 15th, the 18th, but they could call me direct and I can give them. And it should, I think Jimmy has it up on the webpage on the sports. But September 8th is the first day that we can practice, legally practice.
Which is the day after Labor Day, that's it.
Yes.
And just to remind everyone too, Phil, you talked about dates, we're off that Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
Yes.
Monday of Labor Day.
Same schedule we've had for
We've always
years.
done, yeah. Okay, privilege of the floor, Sarah?
Yes, it's a simple question.
Sure, no, it's fine.
Is there any option for using Google Calendar as part of your suite? So
Yes.
students could have their schedules and maybe due dates for assignments?
That is something we have talked about a little bit, as well, maybe using that piece.
It certainly makes my life easier. So
Well.
when I have my kids, I know.
We will move towards, we'll try to use all the components of Google Suite, but I think
There is a way you
It'd
can
be a
do it
very-
in your classroom.
Yes, you
set
can link it.
classroom and
Google Calendar.
There's, and you
Kindly
can
talked about that.
It's also really helpful because I can't monitor him all day. He knows exactly when he's supposed to be where. There were several missed Zoom calls
Yeah.
in the spring. So if he gets like a reminder pop up in his face that he needs to be in class, then that makes my life easier.
Yeah, great. That's great feedback.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to go into non-public, I guess.
So moved.
Okay, great. Maureen and Barbara. Nod, Sam, Phil,